Hi, everybody. Welcome to the September 1st meeting of the Open Space Committee. I'm Adam Young, and let's get started with the agenda. I'm going to begin by reading the special notice. In accordance with the provisions allowed by Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, the September 1st, 2021 public meeting of the Lakeville Open Space Committee will be held remotely. However, to view the meeting in progress, please go to facebook.com/LakeCAM. You don't need a Facebook account to view the meeting. This meeting will be recorded and available to be viewed at a later date at lakecam.tv. Let's start with a roll call of Open Space Committee members in attendance. I'll go through, say your name, and if you're here, respond in the affirmative. Mike Schroeder.
Mike Schroeder here.
Liz Nash.
Here.
Brian Reynolds.
Here.
And Fred Fredima.
Here.
Excellent. And myself, Adam Young, of course, here. There are no non-committee members in attendance, I believe. I think that's unfortunate. I think hopefully we'll be able to get Joan Morton back in attendance. It was great to have her here when she joined last. And anyone else who wants to join can contact us at lakevilleopenspace@gmail.com, and we can send an invitation as long as we're doing these remotely. There are no meeting minutes to approve today. Being the first of the month, I think that puts a lot of pressure on our note takers. So we'll forgive that, and we'll deal with that next month. And what I'll try to do is take Fred's advice and to share that out in advance, so we don't need to read it during the meeting. So we'll skip that for today. And without Donna in attendance, we are unable to pass the July, or was it June, meeting minutes. We still have that to do eventually once we have the appropriate people on staff. So we'll begin with the open space plan, and we'll go through some updates. And I know that Fred has taken the lead on several of those initiatives. For example, he sent several emails this month about the plan status in Table 8, and I want to open the floor to him and see what he'd like to share with us.
I sent that out. One of the things that I got concerned about is I was trying to figure out who was doing what was completed, what was not completed, who was working on what. And so far, the only thing I've been able to ascertain is Mike has done an awful lot of the texting. She's gone through, I think, almost all of the major sections and gone through the texts. What concerns me is that they're not complete. It isn't there. We don't have a section now we can say section 4.B is done. We set it aside. Don't ever have to look at it again. So that's why I created that one table called plant status that goes through each of those individual sections of the plan and identifies what the status is of that particular section, whether it's complete, who's working on it, when do you think it'll be completed, and the responsible individual, whoever happens to be working on it. Unfortunately, I know that I think Liz looked at all of this stuff in terms of editing what Mike has done, but we need to kind of like pull sections together and say, okay, this is done. We don't have to look at it again. Let's now concentrate on C, D, E, and F or whatever. And so the only way to do this, in my mind, and this is just me speaking my ideas, is that people have to sit down with these books. And unfortunately, I don't have one. I went to the library to break one out so I could do exactly what I did, is went page by page. To me, it's easier to do that than going online, because online it's broken up into part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. Then you have to go through back and forth and stuff like that. So I went to the library and did that. But I think we need to get people together with the document and go through and say, okay, is this particular section, does it need to be modified at all? Maybe it's good exactly as is, but we need to get a consensus. Maybe it can be, but I don't think it can be just Mike and I sitting saying, yeah, that's good enough. I think we need consensus that everybody agrees, yes, this looks complete, and leave it aside. Brian, I know, was working on the historical part. We don't know whether that's complete or isn't complete and what has to be done there. So kind of getting it together and doing it. And I know that it's difficult to work face to face because of all our COVID requirements and the restrictions and all that. But there are meeting places where we can get together, I think, in spaces that are big enough that we can separate far enough apart and work. My wife is on, she got involved in town too. So it's good for her. She's now on the COA board of directors. And she said that we could go in and use that room in the COA, which is a huge room, and we could spread out and get involved working there. I think that might be one of the best ways of doing it. So I went through that plan. I went through the list of tables and the list of figures, and a lot of the figures in my simple mind probably are good just the way they are. I mean, the town hasn't changed geographically a whole lot in 10 years. And some of the soils, do you think the soils changed? I doubt it. I mean, the dirt is the dirt. It's been here for 1,000 years. Anyway, so the thought was to go through that with a bunch of people anyway and say, okay, this is done. This is okay. We need this, and start working through that thing and filling that list out and seeing what has to be done. I'm still working on table 8. It's a nightmare, I have to tell you. I've gotten a hold of people from Mass Audubon. I got Nick Grossi from Mass Audubon. I got Vanessa Farney, I think, from Mass Land Conservation. Scott Faden from Wildlands Trust. And he's apparently got some new properties that he's identified. So that's something that can be, and he's interested in getting involved. So I think that's one of the things that I think we need to do. I started looking at other tables besides table 8. I created the one for the population. The census is done, right? We should say, well, we get the census. Well, here's one of the problems that we have with the plan. The plan was created 10 years ago, or maybe more, or somewhere on. Mike, you know better than I do, clearly. But the plan was created a while ago, and they decided this is the way we're going to organize the plan. For example, they took the population table and they broke it down to ages, population ages 0 to 5, 5 to 12, So I got the census data. I contacted Lillian, and she gave me websites. I went further and digging and trying to get census information. And you can get the population, but you get it in a different format. You don't get 0 to 5, you get, for example, 0 to 18, and you get 18 to 24. It's different than what we have. So does that mean we change the table and make a new table out of it using new data? Do we try to find?
Yes, you do it. Yeah.
Do we try to find the data to match the old table, or do we just create a new one? I mean, these are the kind of questions that I think that if we went through the document page by page and looked at it, we might be able to make a decision as a group, as opposed to me just making a decision or me contacting Mike saying, you think we should change this? Mike said, I don't know. What do you think? I said, well, okay. And we do it, but that's not fair. That's not fair to everybody. For example, there's a table in there for the water district. It's table 5. Well, God, when I look at that table, I don't even understand what they're talking about. It's so gobbledygook of technicalities that it makes me wonder, do we really need this table? Can we create a new table?
Which one are you talking about, table 5?
Table 5 is a summary of authorized water withdrawals under the Water Management Act from Lakeville's Great Ponds. So I Googled the Water Management Act. Well, I'm telling you, you can get lost in that area. I'll guarantee you that. And allocations.
Updated those figures.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Okay, let me stop for just a second, Mike, because this is what I'm saying. This is why I'm thinking we should have a meeting where we dedicate it only to working on the plan, because we can get involved. I could go on probably for the next 45 minutes talking about it, but that takes up the rest of the whole meeting and it shouldn't be dedicated just to one subject. But I think we could have a separate working meeting, quote unquote, a planning project meeting, which means you don't have to have it as open space, and we can get together and work on this thing as a group, at least maybe 3 or 4, as opposed to just 2, for example. Okay, that's my spiel. I'm
Liz?
done. Not really, but
I just want to quickly throw in a justification for table 5.
okay.
It tells you how much water is taken out of those ponds.
Correct.
And that makes a big difference to the health of those ponds.
I agree.
And it's how much water is taken out of this watershed.
I agree.
And it's something we do need to be aware of. And I have updated in the plan. I have written updated figures. I can't create a table, but I wrote them in the text.
Okay.
So we could drop the table. They're in the text.
Okay, I can work up the table, but for example, when I look at the table, I see allocation from C400. I have no idea what that means. And the normal person reading this plan, who's new to Lakeville, is going to look at that and say, "What the heck does WMA registered withdrawal mean? Permitted withdrawal?" Those are terms that are confusing to me, and maybe confusing to another reader, but. But for example, Mike, do you have all those numbers that work into that table?
No, what I have is what is the actual withdrawals.
Okay, so we could create a new table.
The permitted ones have not changed because
Well,
they have. I'm sorry, that's a much.
Don't worry about it. We can barely hear it.
The amount that's withdrawn has changed over years, but they still have not reached the maximum that they are allowed. But the amount that is allowed, that was of concern to me because I know with the development of Lakeville and the drawing down of groundwater, that possibly the lake was not being resupplied because we were taking it and putting it into the air with watering lawns and that sort of thing. But apparently that has not been very significant. The studies that have been they still think that the water is the existing permitted withdrawal has not changed by the DEP.
but what you're saying is exactly what I'm saying, is that we need to figure out what we need to do, what we need to change. Do we need to change the way that table is organized?
Did you read the text have you read the revised text that surrounds that?
I read the text to me, and I'm sorry, it's very confusing.
Okay, well,
Can I say something?
Please.
please.
So whenever you have anything that you're trying to accomplish, I guess the first thing we have to figure out is what it is we are trying to accomplish. And I know it sounds very shallow on the outside. We're trying to rewrite the plan, but that's actually not what we're trying to accomplish. What we're trying to accomplish, my opinion, let me back up a little, is that what we're trying to accomplish is writing an open space plan that the people of Lakeville will be able to actually read and get something out of, and will help us motivate people of Lakeville to save their open spaces. That's what my opinion, we're actually trying to accomplish. I think that the plan from 2012, right, Mike?
Yes.
I think that the plan from 2012, along with trying to accomplish that, was also trying to communicate a lot of very technical, very in-depth information, because the people on the committee felt that a lot of people in town did not understand it. So the 2012 plan is a wonderful beginning for us that we have to fix. I kind of agree with Fred. I'm going to say a whole lot of stuff right now. I kind of agree with Fred that it would be really helpful to get into a room. The people willing to get into a room together physically could do so, and we could Zoom other people during that event so that Adam doesn't need to put his 3-month-old child at any kind of risk, because I wouldn't do it. And then for me, I think what we try to go forward with is to pick out the low-hanging fruit first. And I think that's what Fred's trying to say. Let's fix the things that are easy first, put off the things that are complicated, really get down, finish the stuff that Mike's already, she's already done the work on this table. So updating that table is not a big issue, apparently, even though it looks like a highly technical thing. And that's my suggestion in the short term.
This is a good conversation to have.
You said it very well.
Thanks.
I'll provide my own kind of opinion on what you said about the purpose of the plan and what our aims are in editing it. And you're right, it's valuable to every now and then stop and pause and make sure you're still actually acting in pursuit of the original objective. It's a conversation worth having because the plan itself has multiple purposes. And one potential purpose is what you've already said, which is to use it to inform residents and to generate support for open space initiatives and preservation in general. Another objective of the plan is, frankly, it's a bit pragmatic. It's potentially bureaucratic. We need to have an updated plan in order to be able to apply for state funding for conservation efforts. If we don't have an updated plan, we simply cannot apply for those funds, which in the absence of the CPA, which hopefully is another issue that will get addressed, there are, as we know, no other funds. So applying is a big deal. So getting this plan done just for that reason is valuable in and of itself, regardless of how many residents read it. Of course, there's going to be residents who do still want to read it, and they absolutely should. And as of right now, there is currently a copy in the library for anybody who wants to read a hard copy. And if you don't want to read a hard copy, I believe you can find a copy online of the 2012 plan, that is. And anyone who's listening is more than welcome to contribute to this plan. It's not just the committee who can contribute to this plan. But with that said, perhaps the best way of making outreach to the town citizens who are interested in these initiatives, who might not want to read something as in-depth as what the plan currently is, which is kind of Fred's point, which is, the number of gallons coming out of the ponds is relevant to some people, but might not be relevant particularly to some residents in town who, want to generate their interest in open spaces. This is a long way of saying that we don't necessarily need this document to be the most appealing thing to everyone. If it appeals to some people, great. If it's too much detail, but it's a resource they can have access to, that's great also. If we want to be targeting our outreach to the town, there are probably much better ways of doing it than 300-page documents. So I just want to kind of level set and say that not everyone's going to find every aspect of this interesting. And if we get bogged down in kind of reimagining kind of every specific component of this plan in pursuit of a perfect document, we'll be here till 2040. So we don't want that. I think it's important to focus on updating the things that need to be updated, the things that are clearly outdated. And that is objective one in my mind. And we can discuss, what the further objectives are. But number one is simply making sure that the numbers are accurate as they currently stand, that there's no glaring omissions in the plan, things that have changed in town, for example. I think that's the primary objective, at least as I see it, and I'll pause to get any feedback that anyone here has.
Well,
Can I insert something here?
Please.
All I have worked on is not a plan. It's all just background information. We have not started planning. Planning starts with Section 6 and Section 7. All I have worked on is 3, 4, and 5. And as far as I'm concerned, they are so close to being finished that there's not that much more to do. I mean, we could nitpick it, but to a certain extent, there are parts of it that if we can't figure it out, we could drop them.
Clarification, Mike, you're saying 6 is community vision and 7 is analysis of needs?
Analysis of needs. That is that's the section we need to. That's what leads to the, Section 8, I think, is the actual,
goals and objectives.
The actual plan, the goals and objectives, yeah. And so we need to review the analysis of needs, I guess, but maybe we don't even need to review it. We need to talk about what is needed now.
Right, and a big component of that is the survey results. But we'll put
Yes.
put a pin in that for a moment, and keep on the present subject. I think Liz, you had something you wanted to say a moment ago. No. Just
Nope,
about
I totally heard what you were saying, and yeah, it's nice to get back on track. That was well said.
This does lead to another topic I wanted to get to, which is SERPID assistance. And I think I remember Mike you saying that it was you were unable to sync with SERPID's representative, but nevertheless, I think SERPID, if we are allocated some of their hours, they're uniquely suited towards kind of fact checking the statistics and making sure that a lot of the, I mean, really, you have to be an ecological expert to know all of this information. And that's asking a lot of any one of us. So having their help will be huge for updating those things. And I'm hoping that that's the purpose of bringing them in the loop. Is
Yeah,
to
yeah.
just do that update part.
How do we get them?
Well, we get them by asking for hours that are allocated to the town. Not entirely sure how they became allocated. Maybe we purchased them. Someone smarter than me knows the answer. But we've requested some of them. I believe the town has access to 40 hours, and we've asked for 20, but that may or may not be the right amount. So there's going to be a scoping call that is held between us and SERPID to figure out exactly what we need, how much time realistically it will take. And ideally they say, okay, that's great. That'll take 15 hours, and that'll be done in sometime in November. And we can just plan with that knowledge and knowing that their expertise will help us with this. But I think we're still holding on that.
Adam, I read, Liz suggested that I listened to the selectmen's meeting where they talked about that. And it sounded like they're still not clear as whether or not the selectmen's going to allow us to have any SERPID minutes. So I'm kind of confused as to what's happening there. That sounded pretty down. That.
Well, so last month we reviewed a letter that I wrote and that we voted to send to them, to the board, which describes our response to many of the points they made, all valid points. But I do believe that it's really valuable for us to have some SERPID hours for the reasons I've just described. And I'm hoping that they'll agree, because getting this plan passed is one of the fundamental goals for the master plan. It's the first thing on our docket for the master plan. So it's logical. We can't really do it without their help, or we can, but we'll be greatly sacrificing quality in my estimation. So I'm really hoping that goes through. And I believe Mike and Ari, town administrator, are going to be working in the coming weeks and months on making sure that communication with SERPID actually does happen.
All right, just to let you know, I've Ari and I've been playing telephone tag like for the last 10 days.
But that is still moving forward, and regardless if it's happened yet or not, that's still currently the plan.
Okay. I can understand Mike's difficulty. I went to the town hall today. It's they're taking advantage of this COVID thing and locking all the doors, and you can't go find somebody. It's hard to get around that town hall.
Well, we have to make sure that everybody stays safe. I also know that Ari is not brand new, but relatively new, and there's an awful lot of demands on his time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's prioritizing like a crazy person. But they're aware that we need this, and we just have to try to, keep knocking on the door, right?
Hey, I have an interesting comment regarding getting help. There's an activity going on in town whereby people who sell cannabis have to provide 5% of their profits to the town. And the town has a committee that talks about how to spend that money. And right now they have like $30,000 available there. We could use some of that money to pay for Serpent or somebody else to gather information and to help us. I know that when it comes time to put the physical document together, we're going to have somebody who knows how to put all this stuff together, get it printed, get it all, put it into a proper format and all. And that'll take some cash. And it was just a comment about that extra money that might be hanging around somewhere.
That's
This
true.
is
I've
Brian.
never heard of it. Brian, go ahead.
Okay. I thought the money from the cannabis fund is designated to certain town agencies. I don't know if open space is one of them. Historical Commission is one of the ones that is eligible. We have a member from the Historical Commission that is on the Cannabis Committee, or whatever the correct commission or committee.
Right. Yeah, you're
So,
right,
you know, it's
Brian.
being discussed.
Yeah, you're right, Brian. Actually, my wife is on that committee.
So I think, and I'm wondering about it because I've heard this too. I heard this too, and I heard about the different commissions that are actually on that group that are going to decide how those funds that are coming to the town of Lakeville are going to be spent. The Open Space Committee is not a commission, and I have a feeling that might have something to do with it. Also, apparently we didn't have a seat at the table when they were making this decision back when they first started licensing the cannabis places. But the Open Space Committee is actually a advisory board to the Board of Selectmen, and we're appointed. We're not voted on or anything. And I don't know if that had something to do with that. But I had the same reaction. Like, how come Open Space doesn't have a seat at that table? Because, you know, we'd also have an opinion about where some of that money could be spent. But maybe that's something for the future. I don't know.
I'll poke into it.
Right. And there should be enough interested parties in helping us get this, you know, over the finish line. Like I said, it's part of the master plan. So this isn't just us going off on, you know, a limb trying to get something done by ourselves. This is a highly motivated effort. And if there's any way that we can get it done by requesting funds, maybe we can get creative and ask people smarter than us how to find funds. We can do that as well. But in the meantime, I do think that Serpent is the most straightforward solution, because in an ideal world, we get sufficient hours and they help us get almost everything we need done. And then if we need additional help, maybe Serpent can even offer some advice. So that's still the plan. I think that the work that you've done here, Fred, to make you know, a plan status sheet, I think this could certainly be helpful, as long as it's within the right scope. For example, we don't want to be rewriting most of these things if we don't have to. But that's to your point. You know, a lot of the geology hasn't changed in the last 12 years. So we'll look for things that may have changed. I'm sure Mike you have yourself probably already done this, and just focus Serpent's efforts on the things we know are outdated, rather than just kind of unleashing them on an unwieldy document. Any other thoughts on the plan updates or where we go from here before we move on?
Well, could we try to set up a little get together? Do you think that makes sense, guys? I mean, I think I'd be willing to go to a different location, and if we can separate, we can use the library, we can use the COA. Library has a big conference room. I was told we could use that if necessary. And they have a small conference room that seats 6 people. We could certainly do a FaceTime or something.
Yeah.
People who can't go to that location.
Right. That sounds reasonable. I know it's been a real problem in the past trying to find a day and time that works for everyone, which is why kind of we've been stuck in this current date and time for a while. So we can try again, maybe with Jesse no longer a member, maybe that will change the equation a bit, but let's try to find a time where maybe there's at least an hour where we can throw our heads together and do this kind of off the air, so to speak.
Well, for example, the library is open until 8 o'clock several days a week, and we could meet there at 7 o'clock. We'd have an hour to sit and go through a bunch of stuff. I'd be willing to go almost any day of the week.
Okay,
I would like to throw out that I don't see an awful lot of value in having everybody pick over all the details in 3, 4, and 5. I do have a question about one section that I wonder what we want to do about because it's very long. But for the most part, it is indeed technical detail. It's background stuff. But we need to start focusing on this analysis of needs. But if I could just throw this in briefly, it's that thing about the scenic views, which was done in a very precise way. And I don't think anybody wants to repeat that whole effort. But it has totally changed because of a lot of the views are gone. They're obliterated with vegetative growth. I mean, you can't look across the fields like you used to be able to. So there are. I mean, does anybody want to just take that on and just pick out some aspect of it to?
You're right, Mike. Yeah, I'll just kind of summarize what I'm seeing here because I know that Brian doesn't have the computer in front of him, but the analysis of needs has several different subsections. It's something like 40 pages long or something like that. It starts with reviewing the survey results, and the next section, so this is several pages of survey results. The next is titled Statewide Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. So apparently there is a state document that talks about open space and recreation, and apparently we tried to link our goals in this section. Next is Summary of Resource Protection Needs, emphasizing top priority areas, high priority areas, and so forth, foremost among them being watersheds and woodland areas. I won't read too much here. Surface water protection needs, groundwater protection needs, wildlife habitat protection, woodland and forest protection, and so on and so forth. And each one of these has several paragraphs dedicated to it. A following subsection is Summary of Community Needs, and it lists, for example, Table 9 shows different recreations, basketball, hockey, and so forth. The number of people or the number of facilities recommended, the number of facilities we have in the comparison. Walking trails, boating, hunting, all the recreation. It kind of lists what resources we currently have. Much of this will not have changed, thankfully, or perhaps not thankfully. So there's probably not that much to be changed in this section. Management needs, potential changes of uses such as the establishment of land trust, administration, scenic resource management, night sky management, recreation management, and that's it. So I know I mentioned a lot of things. It is quite long. We can break it up, and perhaps maybe we can take Fred's advice to take personal responsibility for each subsection. I know that the large section that deals with the survey, I have no problem with writing that entire thing up myself, and I'll send that to you within the next, I don't want to overcommit, but in the next month or two. And so the rest of it, we can figure out who wants to deal with. But I'm hoping that it's not as daunting as it seems because much of this hasn't changed.
Well,
has anybody taken a look at there's certain requirements that the state puts on us, and I don't know, is this? I know that these sections, I'm pretty sure that these sections are required, but I don't know if the individual topics under each section are required. So it's something we need to check out before we decide we're going to completely rewrite something like this. We need to know if it is, whether we do or not. We need to know what is required of us.
Where do we find that information?
There's a workbook.
Mhm.
If you go to the open space, I think if you just Google Massachusetts open
Yep,
space
I
plan,
remember now. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's, again, I think that it would make a whole lot of sense to have a few of us get together with the book itself and just go through that somewhat as what Adam did just now, but, more of a working group activity as opposed to just, it's hard for me to work this through using the Zoom. And maybe it's just me, but it's much easier in my mind doing it when you lay things out with a group at a table working together.
Mhm.
No, I struggle too because I'm trying to see all your faces and I have you all blown up so it fills my screen and I can't look at a document at the same time. I'm watching Adam. I'm like, Adam's got two screens going, man. He's got to have two screens going.
I've got a big screen and a little screen, and it works.
Yeah.
But just as
So
just as a little bit of reassurance, and I want to emphasize, Mike used the word rewrite. I want to emphasize we shouldn't feel like we need to rewrite. We just need to update. And if there's something that is the same as it was 12 years ago, we shouldn't be changing it. We need to stay focused on making it an update and not something that's just going to turn into list sync.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that same philosophy should hold for the analysis of needs. I do think that a rewrite is necessary for the survey because the survey is very different than it was 10 years ago. But the rest of it, I think someone should just kind of go through, highlight, are there statistics here that we can't confirm? For example, I saw one that says there's a certain number of miles of hiking trails in town. Is that still the same number of hiking trails in town as it was then? I don't know the answer, but that's one of those
Well,
things.
yes, I can answer that. Yes, there haven't been any added.
Then one less paragraph to change.
Yes.
And so that's the strategy I think we should take going forward.
Well, so do we want to sit down with section 7 in person and Zoom Adam? Do we want to pick a different day? And
let's work out the scheduling by email just so I have access to my calendar and we can.
Sure, yeah.
But you're right. Something like that is definitely warranted. And we'll try to do that in the next month and make some more progress. The survey, perhaps now's a good time to talk about it, or does anyone want to continue our conversation?
Well, I think that if you send something out, we pick a date where at least the majority of us can get together, I think that would be a good start.
Let me take a note of that. Specifically for section 7?
Well, I guess we could do that.
And
why don't we start small so we don't overwhelm ourselves? We'll have
that's a good idea. Let's tackle section 7, and if it works, we'll tackle section 8 the next time. I will note that section 6 is one paragraph long. It's kind of strange.
Right. Yeah.
So that'll be easy. So onto the survey. There's only good news, but I will say that the one less good news is that because the survey ended today, or yesterday, I should say, I haven't had time to run the stats or report any results of substance. I will say that in 1999, the open space survey got 196 responses. In 2008, it was 160. In 2021, 974.
Wow.
So that's pretty awesome.
Awesome.
We have there was a bit of pushback on the fact that it did ask for home addresses, and I think this was justified because we needed to send people a survey prize, but also we need to identify that people actually live in Lakeville so that we can count their votes towards what Lakevillians want. And kind of
You need help with this? Because I don't know if you have a program that just runs it or if you sucked it into a spreadsheet or what, because this kind of thing I actually can do.
Thankfully, I actually do have I won't get into the details, but I have scripts that'll do most of it.
Oh, sweet.
So it's just
Nice.
a matter of
That's great.
skipping out from work to do it. So
Yeah,
we
right.
have,
Right.
so we have 818 complete responses. And when someone left it incomplete, it was typically the last question, which asked for the address. And I do think it's important that we're only allowing people with verified Lakeville addresses to be participating, so that we're not just getting some random person online who found the link and wants to win $100. So 818 people, which is excellent, which will really allow us to draw some firm conclusions. I mean, I do surveys for my day job, and I rarely have a survey with 800 people who responded to it. So this is really good news.
Wild.
So as soon as feasible, I'll share the results of that, and then I'll look for ways to kind of spread the word of what we found, because people put their time into it to participate. They deserve to hear what came out of it and not have to necessarily wait for the open space plan to be published. I think just reviewing the results in our meeting is going to be one aspect of it. I can create a short slide deck and maybe host it on the town website so people can see. But I think that'll help for many reasons. I don't need to get into all of them, but there's so many different interesting questions that we asked. Which are the locations that, maybe I'll just quickly review the questions so people can remember what we started like 6 or 7 months ago. Let's see here, bear with me. I want people to remember why we did this and what questions that we asked. All right. Loading. Okay. So we asked, which of the following Lakeville open space properties have you heard of before? This will help us understand, maybe almost to a marketing level, which open space properties need to be more well known. And then for the ones that they did hear of, which ones did they know? How frequently would someone in their family visit them? This will tell us which are getting used and which are not, which has practical implications. We listed the various reasons for protecting open spaces in Lakeville and asked them to indicate how much they do or do not personally care about each reason. And the reasons were ranging from protecting wildlife, protecting water quality, and so on and so forth. So we'll know which reasons people care about the most. We asked which recreation activities people engaged in. This already has a parallel in the current plan. I think that was one question that did exist in the 2012 plan. And then for each of the recreation activities, we asked which people were satisfied with and which people were dissatisfied with. So this will, I think, be particularly interesting because it'll tell us, if there's going to be another open space property, down the line, and it's meant not just for preservation but also for recreation, what should that property allow people to engage in, especially for properties that people, or for activities that people really wish we were allowing them to do in town. We asked a question about the Lakeville Hospital. There was some pushback on that, but I think it's justified to understand, just simply because in a lot of ways, the easy distinction is development is the opposite of preservation. That's not always necessarily true, but it's important to know how people feel about industrial development in town, to know whether it is something that those who appreciate open space think goes with it or kind of goes against it. I think that'll inform a lot of our future actions. We asked a question about the Community Preservation Act, just to figure out if people were leaning in one direction or the other. We asked if it was passed, which use of funds would be the most supported. This will clearly have implications. If it is passed, we'll know which ones are popular in town and which other uses are not as popular. We asked demographic information to make sure that the people who are answering the questions are representative of the people in town, and we can compare that to other census data. And finally, we asked for address to confirm that they were Lakeville residents. So next month, hopefully I will have been able to analyze some of those questions and share the results with you. And then we'll make sure that we publicize them so the people who spent their time answering them can hear the answers. And in the meantime, that's all we have on the survey.
Adam, do you have a random number generator that you're going to use to pick the winner?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Maybe I'll even record it so people will see the randomness.
There you go. Probably not a bad idea.
Okay, so that's the survey. Were there any other comments or questions or updates about the plan itself?
Well, I guess I could say that Joan Morton reviewed all the historical sections, and I had those, and she actually she responded that there's a section of the analysis of needs, and that I hadn't asked her to do that, but she did it anyway, and she did it as a saying what the historical commission had as its goals, and so it's appropriate. I think we can just use it.
Okay, great. All right, I think that's that for the open space plan. Look for my email in the coming days where we schedule a meetup so that we can make more progress on section 7. The only remaining old business to discuss is the Arts Fair booth. Is there anything that you want to say about that?
Well, it's coming up. We only have a month now. Do you want my suggestions or possible suggestions?
Could you remind me of the date and time?
Oh gosh, I forget. Hang on.
I believe it's October.
It's the first. I think it's the first weekend in September.
October 7th.
I mean October. Yes, it's the 2nd. So it's only a month away. And you just mentioned that one of the things that you thought the survey was indicating is that our open space properties needed a little more advertising. That is a perfect thing that we can do. I've done that in the past. And I don't know if I could dredge up all the same stuff that I used, but I had I just had pictures from each of the had a map that showed where they were, and I had pictures from each one. I mean, they're not that many, but it is it's one thing we could do. But the other thing about the booth, and this is something I need to talk to Ari about. When I asked about when I applied for the booth, I said that we would display materials for the CPA, and I don't. That was when I really was expecting that the selectmen were going to put it on the warrant, and I don't know if we know they're going to, or if we know they're not going to. But I need to talk with Ari about whether or not it's going to indeed be okay for us to put out materials. There won't be anything that says vote for the CPA. It would be material that just educated people as to how it works.
Okay. I know it's important to kind of do it the right way and make sure that we're not.
Well, that's why I had hoped to talk with Ari before this meeting. But as I say, we've been chasing each other for over a week now.
Let me share something really quickly because I think this is valuable. I'm going to put my screen on the video. Hopefully you can see, this is the Lakeville Master Plan 2020 document. And you can see, even though it uses 2029 as the target date, one of the primary things that has been assigned to us in the Open Space Committee, among others, the first and foremost being update the Open Space Plan, is to initiate efforts to adopt the CPA to protect priority areas. Mm-hmm. So with this being charged to us in the master plan, it would seem surprising if we weren't allowed to use open space, the open space booth, however you want to call it, to try to initiate efforts to adopt the CPA.
Well, yes,
Good
yes,
point.
and I thought that was the case, so I'm glad you have confirmed it because I didn't go back and look at the master plan, but that's what I thought they had done. And I believe that the master plan is kind of, don't all the various and sundry boards, do the selectmen like accept this, or is this is also just an advisory thing and they either ignore it or not?
No, I think that they accept it because it was kind of, I mean, the community got together and tried to set this up. And I think this particular group of folks that are running town knew that people are pretty married to this effort. Isn't this also, there's a lot of other things that are going on because of this, isn't there? Because of the master plan. There's other movements afoot because of the master plan, I believe.
There should be. The master plan really was our roadmap to what to do to move this town in the direction that is, agreed upon. And lots of things for different committees. And for us, the first is the update. Down the line is, far down the line, is the CPA. So if we were able to do that 8 years ahead of schedule, I'm sure the master plan committee would be thrilled.
I agree.
So I will certainly bring up the master plan when I talk, I haven't emailed him, but I think that's what I should do. I'll get an email out to him first thing tomorrow morning, and try to call him as well. But the email would be we get it in writing. And I will copy, I'll copy you, Adam, and you can pass it on to everybody else.
Okay. So with that said, we'll move on to new business. The next item is planned development in Montgomery Street / Barstow Street area. And this is something that I kind of heard through the grapevine. I'll stop sharing. And I guess it's more of a question than a comment at this point, but I'm wondering what the process is supposed to be for us being informed of Chapter 61 properties potentially being taken out of Chapter 61 status. That seems to be something that is within the scope of our charter, of the purpose of our committee. And it was kind of an indirect way that I found out about this potential development. And I'm just wondering, is there anything I should know from anyone in the committee? Does anyone know how this process is supposed to work? How we're supposed to be formally updated when these things change?
In the past, the committee has always been informed. Now, I don't know what the process was. It's just that we always, somebody always told us. I don't know who is responsible for doing that. Has this property come out, or is it just people are talking about doing it?
I was told by someone on the planning board that it came before the planning board. Although I would not expect that it's someone on the planning board's responsibility to inform us. So maybe it's just something that I bring up with those in town office and just try to sort out that way.
Yeah, I think we're supposed to be involved in properties that are either going in or coming out of 61. And as a matter of fact, I think that Derek is taking the Lakeville Country Club out of 61.
Okay.
I thought that there was, so correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't one of the things we've spoken about over the last few months is a list of properties that are in Chapter 61?
Yes, I have a list.
That are coming up due to either be...
No, I don't have a list of them with the ones that are coming up due. No, but we can ask
that was
for
something
that.
Okay. So, I mean, if the Open Space Committee was actively working with a list of Chapter 61 properties and their deadlines or their timeframes, then we would know, as opposed to hoping somebody tells us.
Well, if they come out, if they're up to be renewed, that's a different thing. But what we're talking about is properties that are being taken out.
Well,
if they're not renewed, there is a period, and I forget how many years. They can't change the use without penalty for a few years, and I forget how long it goes.
So there's a list of properties in 61 with deadlines of when they need to re-up. And then that same list of properties in 61, the owners of those properties can choose at whatever time, depending on how much of a penalty they want to pay, to take those properties out of Chapter 61.
Yeah.
And the penalty that people pay to take the properties out of Chapter 61 is someone's got to pay the back taxes, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you threw me for a loop because I live in the area. What property on Barstow and Montgomery is coming out of Chapter 61?
I'm happy you asked. I will share that with you.
Because there's been a piece of property that's a beautiful field that they've had a for sale sign on for a while. And I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but that's not on Barstow. That's.
I'll share my screen again to share with you what I see.
Maps. I am not a good map reader.
So this polygon is Lakeville, and I'll zoom in and show you the Barstow area. We can see precinct, Barstow, and Montgomery, and I've been told that it is this property, property 018-002. I'm hoping I've been informed correctly, but I didn't because I didn't find this out.
He's kind of, there's like no frontage.
Right. So it's, I think, 30 acres, something like that.
Wow.
And I watched part of the planning board meeting, and several of the butters were making comments about making sure that there would be appropriate drainage from any kind of development that went back there.
Yeah.
And really the only relevance that our committee has to this property at this point is if there was to be any mechanism for exercising the right of first refusal and in some way purchasing or protecting or working with any kind of nonprofit to protect this property. Clearly, we do not have funds to do that. That's the purpose of the CPA. That's the purpose of updating the plan to be able to request or to apply for.
Well, Adam, you know, land trusts have the ability to acquire property and to work with owners to put properties under conservation restrictions. And as I mentioned earlier, I talked to Scott McFadden, I think his name was, very interested in properties in Lakeville. He said they're now area of expertise or area includes Lakeville. So that's an organization that could probably look into that and say, well, we could do something about trying to protect that property and leave it as open space.
I do wonder if they'd be interested in that, considering turning it into a, this might be hearsay because again, I haven't heard officially what the plans are, but I believe it's supposed to become a housing development. And if that's the case, I'm sure we'd be a bit hard pressed to find funds that would offset, what it would sell for to be a housing development.
And it may have happened before my time, but as now as a member of the Conservation Commission, we do get all of the properties that are being put into subdivisions. We get a say in what happens with those properties. So I have not seen anything related to this property. As a matter of fact, I was going to bring it up at some point in our meeting. There's a subdivision being planned for the address is 162 Bedford Street for a six lot subdivision, and it borders wetlands. And I believe that when I calculated it, there could be as much as 18 acres of land that could be available. That's it right there. Yeah. That could be available for open space.
So this is, you said 162 Bedford? I think it's important to,
Yep.
to point out that different properties are going to have different value for preservation. And that was one of the things that I wanted to kind of just say, I guess, about the property we're looking at here. This is the tool by Mass Audubon. It's called Mapper, and it takes in lots of factors that matter in terms of core habitat of species, whether something is protecting a watershed, how big the parcel is, whether it is adjacent to other parcels, and they rank properties that are not protected in terms of how much they should be protected according to those factors. So if I zoom out quickly, you'll see LeBaron Hills is 11 and it's red. This is something that Audubon believes is very important to protect.
A
And
bit late for that.
what we do see is if we zoom into this area.
Ooh, look at this one down here. Look, there's one here that I'm looking at. The one by Elder's Pond. Oh yeah, is that the one where the bog is?
Yep, that is right.
No, that's De Moranville. No, it's the one. It's the next one. The Tuamala is the. Is that the Tuamala property? The 11.
De Moranville and Tuamala are one of
Yeah.
these.
Oh, it's one piece. Yeah.
Tuamala
Yeah.
and De
That's the one we looked at many years ago, and really wanted to protect it.
I haven't been in any kind of conversation with Jean de Moranville or the family. I was actually able to send a text message to Mr. Tuamala. He did say that this property is still for sale. So that's something to maybe consider once we actually have funds. But to keep it on target with our kind of current topic is the Barstow Street area is, oops, that should have been a zoom in. Where is it? Oh, come to me. Here we are. It's this area, this 3. So it's not a highly important property in terms of its ecological value for preservation. I'm sure it's very important to the abutters that it doesn't turn into a housing development. But I think that's just worth emphasizing. Whereas you mentioned, Fred, 162 Bedford Street, which was near Clear Pond. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it's up, it's it borders the Lakeville Country Club.
Right.
Now that has wetlands in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know that it borders the 14th hole on the golf course, and I've been there. It's very wet.
So that's right on the intersection of 79 and 18. Okay.
That
I
where the
see.
railroad station is? The old railroad station.
Yeah.
18 and
Is it really, Mike?
Hmm?
That's not where the old railroad station is it?
There is it's right across from what? The Tamarack Liquor Store? Is that, am I
Wow,
thinking
really?
right?
That's the same
Yeah.
space?
And if we zoom in there, we do see that that section is not labeled as of particular importance. Now, this is not the be-all, end-all Audubon's ranking, but it is worth mentioning.
Well, Adam, quite a long time ago, the Board of Selectmen asked us to list properties we thought were priority,
Right.
and we had to come up with a list of criteria.
Mhm.
And one of them was there was a lot of the same stuff that Audubon has, but it was connectivity. Sites that connected each other, and that particularly led to properties along bodies of water, creeks and streams, rivers.
Mhm.
But also we added to that prime farmland.
Okay. So, yeah, we have prime farmland. We have critical linkage.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
all there. It's
Yeah,
all
it's
there.
all-
Yeah, and
So
parcel size. The parcel size makes a big difference.
And I have shown this once before, several months ago, and just since we're on the topic, of course, there's LeBaron Hills being very important. We have the Ocean Spray property is very important. Something kind of adjacent to it, not entirely sure what that is. 13 seems really high. David Sopa, I don't know anything about that. 110 acres. But also worth mentioning, and what I did mention the last time this came up, was the very large parcel, and the highest score on the map was Howland Road, 30 Howland Road. So just reminding people of what we've talked about in the past, and if we do think that this way of ranking properties is a good one, then it's just worth mentioning that the property that is in Chapter 61 right now on Barstow and Montgomery, that's a low priority issue, at least in terms of this current way of thinking about it. But I'll pause for any comments people have.
Oh, but just thinking about it as being open space, whether it's worth protecting or not. Open space is someplace that is not developed, cannot be developed, and it is open.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to be realistic to some degree though, and I assume that that's why the Board of Selectmen years ago asked the Open Space Committee to come up with priorities, because you can't save everything. We're not going to be able to. All of these properties are owned by private individuals who have reasons that they're taking it out of Chapter 61 or may want to sell it. I know that I think one of the important parts of getting CPA passed was because a lot of people, this land is their retirement plan. They're getting older and and the land is becoming very valuable and they don't have incomes anymore or whatever, or they want to leave something to their kids, and they're cashing in on their property, especially because values are so high and the developers are running all over Lakeville looking for places to develop. And
right.
I mean, all of these departments in this town are connected to each other, whether it's the Conservation Commission or whether it's the Planning Board, and the Open Space Committee, but also the things that the town of Lakeville also passed and something I don't think we think about or look at very often, but I know I'm very aware of it because of the hospital property. And I wish I was a better detailed person, but there are documents in town that talk about what areas of town they were going to allow to be developed as industrial, business, corporate, etc. And we need to have a grasp on what that decision was by the town, what those areas were, what areas we had said why the 2012 open space plan said certain properties were a priority, looking at Audubon's, whether anything's changed. I mean, has things changed?
Well,
are there different properties that are priorities now? Are there easier sells than other ones? Are there ones we're going to have to sacrifice so we can actually save a different one?
There was a process that was associated with the rail development. People went around, I think Serpent was involved in this process. They went around to the different towns and they had Board of Selectmen had meetings and they were very poorly attended, I would say, in Lakeville, where people were supposed to present arguments for what they thought should be priority development and priority protection. And it was that type of meeting that led to some of those properties being selected. But they were not based, it wasn't based on something like the Audubon thing. It just kind of like poured out of people that happened to be paying attention.
Well, because like the hospital property, I mean, just
that was priority development.
Well, and to throw it out there, right? That makes a lot of sense. It's already been developed.
But it wasn't priority industrial development. It was just priority development. Yeah.
Right.
But
well, that's yeah.
But I want to throw in just a comment that is like leading toward the planning process. One of the things that is a tool that will protect some of this open space is an open space development bylaw. And it is something that has been toyed with and discarded and toyed with and discarded. But when you look at a piece of property like this one that we're talking about on Montgomery Street, If it was developed according to an open space bylaw, which we don't have, you would have a denser group, and then a lot of property that would be deeded open space, not accessible, Fred, for people to walk on, but it would be deeded as to be left wild, or in whatever condition they was worked out when the development was done.
Now, how do you do that to a private landowner, Mike?
You have it as an option, and it is, but you make it attractive for developers. And
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
Are you talking about cluster zoning?
Cluster, exactly. That's what they used to call it, but they now call it open space design.
Okay.
But it's the same type of thing. But you go into a piece of property and you say, okay, the most sensitive part of this property is this little piece right here. So instead of chopping it up into 2.5 acre lots or whatever we have, you make the lots like 1/4 of an acre, or you make the houses, townhouses, and you set aside a significant amount of the acreage as to be left wild.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be an education process for us, explaining that and making that sound desirable to, I would think, most of the people.
There are a lot. Actually, we have a planning board member who is all in favor of it, and that's the chair.
Well, and you can see that, because
we have I'm not so sure that our board of selectmen would all be on board, but I do believe that the planning board could be convinced.
Oh boy.
But anyway, that to me ought to be one of our goals when we reach that point. But back to the topic.
It's a zoning condition.
I'm trying to find it in the master plan right now, but perhaps I'll just do that later.
Have they got that one in there too?
It is in there somewhere.
I thought so. Yeah.
I remember that the action item was not for the open space committee. It was perhaps it was zoning.
Planning board probably as well.
Later, right. Okay, something else to consider, and maybe something we'll put on our monthly agendas once we have the plan behind us. But I don't want to bite off more than we can chew. Seems like we're chewing a lot as it is. All right. Any other comments on Montgomery Street, Barstow Street area? I'll just kind of summarize what I've said so far. Is I believe that based on from what I've seen, it's not an ecological / preservation priority. It's probably very important to the people directly near it, but considering we have no funds, getting any funds for a project will be difficult, and something of relatively low ecological value, I don't think could be, a rallying cry, and that's just kind of my current opinion. Does anyone want to comment on that?
No, I can see your point. You know what I am curious about though? Like, is that Audubon map that you use, Adam, is it old or is it updated constantly? Because, when you change the land in a town, the land uses, everything's affected. I mean, if you fill in a swamp over here, all those critters got to go somewhere, so maybe they move someplace else and things change.
It says that the open space and parcel data was updated in 2016, so it's 5 years old.
Okay, I was just curious. Yeah, just wondering. Thank you.
Yeah. And I suppose maybe we can learn more in the coming months about the property that Fred introduced us to, because I haven't heard anything about that yet either.
That's brand new.
Okay. With that said,
the Lakeville Country Club area is probably a high priority to the Audubon Society.
I believe, which surprised me, was that, let me zoom in again on my screen. I know I've taken it down, but I can see LeBaron Hills is an 11. That was one of the highest scores. Folkaway Brook was a 7. Lakeville Country Club was a 4.
Oh, really?
And I believe a lot of the difference in score is adjacency to Massasoit. I know that they really emphasize creating larger areas rather than kind of isolated pockets of green space. And that's probably why the difference in those numbers exists. So without any further comments, we can move on to any other topics. I've just kind of left an open item under new business if anyone has any items that they want to bring up that haven't come up yet.
I have a really terrible thing that I have to, I go to Betty's Neck with some regularity.
Mm.
And I'm not going to say I have heard a rumor in the rumor mill that Deacon's Cranberries has sold some of those bogs that lead to Betty's Neck.
Yes, they belong to a Canadian company.
The ones that lead directly to Betty's Neck?
Yes.
Is this recent?
I'm not quite sure how recent, and I think it was Joe Chamberlain that told me that.
Because they're not.
Oh, no. It wasn't Joe Chamberlain. It was,
We don't have to
I
talk
can't
about
think of
who.
his name. He's
That's
one of the
okay.
people, he's the volunteer that has for years helped Nancy. So
Okay, I was just curious, like, because they're not farming them anymore.
They're not what?
Farming them anymore. I mean, someday, Mike, you know how you and I walked, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to make the meeting much longer, but remember when the whole thing was first going down on Betty's Neck when the nursing home went?
Yeah.
And you and I walked with the fish and wildlife lady up there.
Yeah, Joan Pierce, yeah.
Yeah, I try not. So remember how she explained to us that road that leads into Betty's Neck that's in such crappy shape belonged to Deacon's, and that's not the way that the people in town are supposed to be getting into Betty's Neck anyway. Remember how she said that? And
I don't remember her saying that wasn't the way we were supposed to get there, because that's the only road that goes in.
No, there's 2 roads that go in.
Well, one goes through the bogs and one goes around the edge of the bog.
Yes, and that's what I mean. So people don't use the one that goes around the edge of the bog. People use the one that goes through the bog. And if they've sold that road and those bogs, and anyway, when are we going to try to do something about people using the correct way into Betty's Neck? That has been bothering me ever since I took that walk with you with the wildlife lady.
I thought that the road that goes directly through the bogs was blocked off, that there was a gate. No? Because I always
think the
take
gate is on the goes around the bogs.
The gate is on the one that goes around the bogs, correct, Brian?
Right.
No, there's no. We're talking something different, because I just was there, and I drove the road that goes
straight in. You drove the road that goes straight in.
You head for the condos, and just before you get to the condos, you turn, and you're following an edge.
Okay, and what about that road that goes to the right between those buildings?
You're not supposed to take that one.
Okay, so I understood it exactly opposite from what you understood. So that's
because the road opposite leads up to the Peach Barn. It doesn't go to the parking lot. You have to take the road that goes to the parking lot.
Yeah, I know. So I understood completely opposite back then.
They were opening that gate when there were events being held at Betty's Neck, so that people could park in the field.
Yes, but that's special events, Brian. That's they open it up different then. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will back off from this, except that I'm still confused. But the other thing that we did talk about though at the time with her was that the town of Lakeville doesn't do a very good job of signage down there.
Oh yes, this is true.
And helping people find Betty's Neck and enjoy Betty's Neck as open space.
That's right.
And it's something that someday, sooner or later, the Open Space Committee is going to need to head up. with the town is some real signage, maybe some
It's
educational stuff for open space.
a really good CPA project.
There you go. All righty. Thank you. That's been bugging me. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully no one in their car ends up in a bog. Were there any other topics anyone wanted to raise?
Well, just to get back to the booth. Am I the one doing this? Is anybody going to help?
I have to work the festival. I have to work the silent auction, as you already know. So I am not available to work the open space booth. I'm already committed.
And
So
I have
know
a genealogy meeting that day.
I don't know if Fred wants to come on down and spend a couple hours covering the booth on a lovely day out.
I probably can.
And I don't know, maybe Adam wants to bring his baby. That'll bring people over to talk to you.
I will consider it.
Well, it's partly, but it was my idea, so I guess I'm going to be the one that designs it and sets it up. Anybody happen to have a canopy?
That's a good question.
Well, because I have a friend who used to loan it to me, but I don't know if she still has it. But I'll have to get to work on that. Okay.
Did you one time say that the CPA was going to have a booth also?
No,
Weren't we going to share a booth with them or something?
we will be show. I have to clear this with the Board of Selectmen through Ari, but we think that. But Adam just pointed out it should not be an issue. We
But
will
you could
display.
ask them, the CPA ladies, if they have a tent, because they strike me as the kind of folks who might have a tent.
They
So,
might.
oh, really, if we're showing some stuff for them and they're and they
Okay,
can
they
come.
might just be willing to loan it anyway.
Well,
Okay.
No, my question is why not share the tent with them?
Well, it's our booth. We're the ones that officially were given the booth by the Arts Council.
So the CPA doesn't have a booth?
No,
Oh,
they're piggybacking on ours.
oh.
In
well,
other words, they will put out they have a little folder that shows a handout that they have, and there'll be stacks of the handout, and that's about it. And there'll be somebody, and what I'm sure that some of them will stand there to answer questions.
No,
That's about it.
that'll work. But definitely ask one of them if they've got a little pop-up tent, because they strike me as somebody might.
I've been there in driving rain. It's nice to have sides because everything you have like falls over and blows around, gets wet.
No.
It's not going to rain, Mike.
I love your attitude, Liz.
Thank you. It's going to be a beautiful day. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous.
You really just need one of those canopy things that just covers it, 4 legs. I don't know where you get one. When I was in Maine, we got one from the Land Trust. They let us use it. So
You have to find somebody that has one that'll loan it to you. I've had a couple of sources in the past, and I'll ask around.
I don't know anybody here.
Yeah.
Except you guys.
Unfortunately, I don't have one.
Oh boy.
Maybe you could ask on social media. Maybe there'd be someone.
Oh, yeah.
Well, do you know whether or not my wife is in the garden club? I don't know if they're going to have a booth or not, but they may have.
I don't think the junior garden club has had a display, but I've never seen one with the garden club. I don't know.
Well, I'll see. If
I'll ask Joanne.
Or I'll ask my wife. She's on the garden club.
Okay. All right. Your wife jumped into town. Well, you both jumped into town with both feet, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you did too, Adam. Yeah.
It's a good town. let's keep it moving. I want to discuss the liaison topics. So we'll start with the Historical Commission.
Well, there's still work to be done, and I haven't got things up to date yet. But we have, a regular meeting scheduled for October, and we'll have to discuss things then.
Okay. APC?
Well, the only thing to report about that is that the herring fishery finally did their trial run on getting weeds out of one small section of the Nemasket River. But the APC doesn't meet again until next year, and the Nemasket Steering Committee has not met again. So I don't know when the next public meeting is, but I'll make sure everybody knows when it comes up.
Okay. Future CPC. Any updates from this future CPC?
Well, they're putting signs out all over the place, and people are asking questions. There's a Facebook page, and people are responding. We're always getting they're actually on the Town Republican Committee Facebook page. There is a challenge to it, which says that it's designed to let them do all their favorite projects and take away from you what you've worked for all your life. That's kind of the message. So it's that's something that the CPC, the CPA, this group, it isn't really the CPC yet. It's just a group that's advocating for the CPA. But that's a message that they're going to have to deal with.
Good to know. But the CPA hasn't been put on the warrant for.
It's not on the warrant yet, and if the board if the town does it, it's a fairly straightforward thing. But if the town does not, and the warrant I think should be opening pretty soon. I thought it was like now that it was opening, but the group will have to go around and get signatures. I forget how many before we can to put it to bring it to town meeting.
Okay.
But they are choosing to. One thing that they could have done is just put it directly on the ballot.
Right.
But towns that have brought it to a town meeting first have had better luck getting it passed, even though it did not work the first time it was tried here.
Well, things have changed since then.
Well, we still have it is an increase in taxes. It's something like about the average homeowner would pay $38, an additional $38. And for some people, that it isn't that it's that much money. But it's the symbolism of paying more taxes to. One of our members professes to be a conservative Republican. One of the members of this committee, and her argument is that you may be against big government, but there are roles for government to play. And if you don't like big government, you want it to be more local, and that this is very much a locally controlled thing because you make the decisions. The townspeople have a lot of control over how the money is spent.
Best argument I've heard in a long time.
All right. But it hasn't been officially brought to the board yet because I thought that was on their.
It has been discussed. Yes, it has been.
Okay. I should go on LakeCAM.tv and check up on recent goings.
Yeah, I think it was just yesterday or somewhere within the last week, and I haven't seen it either because I haven't had time.
All right, we've got our homework. Fred with Concom.
Only what I said about the property on Bedford Street.
Okay. If you hear anything else about that in the next month, I'll put it on the October, can't believe I'm saying October already, the October agenda.
Okay,
The last thing to discuss is that we still have an opening on the committee. Donna has, I believe she intends to stay on the committee, and she has to go to town hall and confirm. And she will be back in town because I know she's a seasonal resident, I believe, so she'll be back in town next month. So we should make quorum a little easier. But we still want to have a full committee, and we still have one open spot. So if anyone knows anyone else who would like to get involved, hopefully, ideally, someone who could help us with this plan, anyone with writing skill or project management skills, that would be wonderful. Still looking for that 7th member. And I suppose we'll leave it there. Unless anyone has anything else they'd like to bring up. In that case, I'll ask that someone make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I move that we adjourn.
Second, Brian.
All right, and we will have a roll call vote to end the meeting. I'll go through your names and you'll say affirmative. Mike Schroeder,
Aye.
Liz Nash,
I
Brian Reynolds,
Aye.
Fred Fredima.
yep,
I got your name right this time, didn't I?
yeah,
All right. Fredima the Redeemer.
yeah.
And Adam Young, aye. All right, I'll talk to you all via email to discuss a time when we can meet on section 7.
Okay.
I'll keep working on the survey. Mike, I think you'll talk to Ari about Serpid, and we'll make progress in between now and then. So I'll see you all then.